All right, one thing I want to pick up on that I did not cover, which is very important before we get into the actual use of this all afternoon, has to do with a profound thing that happens with this, that unless you are aware of it, you won't notice it. And that has to do with belief changes and cognitive shifts that happens as you're doing this. You see, with somehow or other, when this process is successful, which is most of the time, it literally shifts the beliefs that people have about their issue. Now, you won't know that unless you ask them questions. A great example would be, I've had many cases of rape, for example, where I might ask the client to begin with, how they feel about the assailant. And I get terms like he's a beast and he ought to be put in jail, and so on and so on and so forth. And they end up as a result with the belief at some level within them that all men are potential rapists, and they look over their shoulder the rest of their life, and they have difficulty having normal romantic relationships, and so on and so forth. I could ask them logically whether all men are potential rapists or whatever, and logically no, they will tell you no, but from an emotional level, because of their experience, they behave and react as though that were a very true statement. Now, with great regularity, after doing the tapping for the rape issue, they will say something like, "Oh, he was the one with the problem. I was just in the way." Now, do you hear a very healthy cognitive shift? That doesn't mean it's still her favorite experience, okay? It doesn't mean she wants to talk about it a lot, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, but do you hear the cognitive shift underneath? That's the kind of thing therapists work for months and years to get somebody to say and believe it, okay? And in this case, if you will ask properly, so you're getting their proper statement out, they will give you that cognitive shift. They will also behave differently as time unfolds because of the cognitive shift. Now, one of the criticisms that I've gotten over time that's inaccurate about EFT is that it doesn't allow you insights. That's the way it's going. The one I use allows you insights, but see, EFT does not allow you insights. Okay. And a better way to state that is, whatever I do has within it a protocol for finding out what the insights are. Like there's some talk therapy involved in it or something like that, okay? And so therefore, EFT isn't what it's supposed to be because we don't get these insights. Well, let me suggest something to you. It's a matter of semantics. When you have insights to something, you have a cognitive shift which you are then discussing and you are then articulating. You have a cognitive shift going on, a belief change, if you will. And it's called an insight because it is verbalized, because it is articulated, because they talk about it and they go, "Oh yeah, that's right," And right before the therapist's ears and eyes, the person is saying, "Oh yeah, and this happened and that happened. No, I know that," and they have an insight. "Oh, now I see." Okay? Insight. Okay? Now with EFT, we do this tapping, they have the cognitive shift, but unless you put something into the protocol that will bring these insights out, these cognitive shifts out, they will not be called insights because they have not verbalized them. And therefore, they don't know they had an insight. They will behave differently. They've had the cognitive shift very clearly, and you'll see that the more experience you have with it. It happens greatly, and it's very profound. But unless you dovetail in there some form of way to verbalize that, you will not see the insights, okay? Interesting point. Now, question is, well, why don't we just put something in the protocol that creates insights and all of that, And that's because I wanted to leave this as flexible as I can. Now, when I was dealing with the Vietnam veterans, or for that matter, the prisoners, I dealt with a number of prisoners that are, in prison for murder and serial murder and all, people with a lot of problems. Many of these people could not care less about the why of it. Our Vietnam veterans, for example, want one thing. They don't want those nightmares anymore. And you could stomp on their big toe, and if the nightmares went away, they couldn't care less as long as the nightmares go away. They don't want to articulate it. They don't want to go over it again. They've done that hundreds of times with all the conventional stuff, and they're sick of it. And so, you know, it's meaningless to them. So we can just do the tapping, and as long as we are proficient in what we're doing, getting the right issues and so on, we should have great success with it. They'll walk out the door without any, they have a lot of cognitive shifts, but they'll walk out the door without them. The fellow on the Vietnam vet on our EFT course tapes, his name was Robert. He was, those of you who saw it, he was the fellow that had to shoot this young boy, Vietnamese boy that was walking towards him like a zombie with a loaded grenade, okay? And he'd shoot the boy in the head, okay? And so that has stayed with him forever. What you did not see on the tape, because at the time I was editing it, I didn't want to show it, although I should have in retrospect, is when he started talking about this, he just broke into big tears. And he says, "You don't shoot little kids." You know, and he was really, I mean, I should have shown it, but I did not. At the time I was editing, I was trying to look out for, you know, his own reputation, that kind of, even though he had signed agreements that allowed me to use this. So I didn't show it. But that's what he said. "You don't shoot little kids." And he was really upset about it. We started doing the tapping. Anyway, those of you who saw the film saw that shift in him. And he would say, no, he says, I'm looking at it now like it was a movie. After we were doing some tapping. I'm looking at it now, he was coming up, but it's like it's a movie, okay? Like he's apart from it. And at the end of it, he said, and you could hear this on the tape, he says, you know, he says, it was him or me. And that was the case. It was him or me, okay? And he didn't really have much of a choice because the kid was going to come and throw some grenade in his Jeep, you know? But that, while it may seem a little subtle, is a major cognitive, that is major. From "you don't shoot little kids" to "it was him or me." And that doesn't mean he has no remorse about it. He's certainly wish it didn't happen. He's not going to talk and go out and brag about it. But as far as having the unnecessary sting leave, it went, and the cognitive shift was very obvious. You had a question back here?
A comment. I found it kind of fascinating that first I was focusing on the pain and hurt that I felt in response to, you know, being verbally abused. And afterwards, I found myself thinking how sad that a little girl was treated that way.
Did you hear a cognitive shift? You know, I mean, it's profound what goes on, and yet it seems almost routine. It seems, to most of the clients, it seems almost routine. They talk about it like that's the way it's always been. You know, when they have the cognitive shifts, et cetera. Yeah, but yeah, we get a lot of that. We get a lot of that going on. You're not worthy because he doesn't think you're worthy?
God doesn't.
Because God doesn't think you're worthy. Okay. All right. Okay. All right. Because if you partake in such a thing, right? Okay. Then you have somehow or other blemished yourself in the eyes of God. Well, let's be more specific. You have blemished yourself in the eyes of the Catholic Church's version of God. Mm-hmm. Is that correct? Okay. All right.
And my dad.
And your dad. Well, the same thing.
As a little girl, yes.
As a little girl, yes. Okay. That's interesting, okay? The God thing. Because see, there's lots of religions out there. And there are some religions that would look at that and go, geez, who thought of that? Some religions would think that, okay? Others, yeah, you ought to be guilty. Yeah. There you are, 9 or 10 years old, you know. Somebody's holding you down at this bad experience. You, of course, should pay for it. That's not a very logical thing. How are you feeling?
Pretty emotional.
Okay. What's going on? That's right. You have to do a thing. I'm just going to
I'm sorry. I'm just trying to think what's going on.
Don't think about what's going on. Just stay with me. I'm just going to tap up and down. Okay. We'll see what happens, okay? This is the kind of thing I recommend anybody do is tuning into stuff, you know, like this, and you get emotional about it. Just start tapping up and down. Because chances are something's going on, even though you're not able to articulate it, which apparently you aren't easily, okay? But it's there nonetheless. You're tuned in, so you just tap. You just keep tapping and keep tapping and keep tapping. How you doing?
Well, it doesn't make any sense.
What doesn't make any sense?
it doesn't make any sense that I would think that, that God would not want me because of this. I know it makes no sense.
Okay.
But it's still kind of wired that way.
Yes, of course. That's your emotional response. What you just saw was a classic cognitive shift with EFT. Pamela now has a new perception about God's attitude towards her, even though we never tapped upon it directly. It just sort of happened beyond the scenes. These cognitive shifts happen sometimes with frequency in our sessions. You need to be aware of them and notice them when they're occurring, because that's big evidence that you're making progress.